With the LA Clippers just defeating the Utah Jazz in 6 games of the second round, they now advance to the Western Conference Finals, and that means they will now face the Phoenix Suns in the Western Conference Finals. And with injuries to both teams' star players in Chris Paul and Kawhi Leonard, I feel like these two teams are somewhat even, and I think it would be a very close and competitive series. So in today's video, I'll be predicting who I think will win between the Phoenix Suns and the LA Clippers. The way it's going to work is I'm going to give some reasons on why I think the Phoenix Suns can win the series, and I'm going to give some reasons to why I think the LA Clippers can win the series. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give my prediction on who I think will win. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and touch my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video, start a conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. Start the video off, I'm going to give a reason to why the Phoenix Suns can win this series. If I'm being honest, the first reason Phoenix can win the series is simply because of the fact that Kawhi Leonard is not going to play at all in this series, because in the previous round versus the Utah Jazz, he reportedly suffered an ACL injury, and I think there's a high chance that he's out for maybe even the rest of the season. And obviously, if the team you're facing doesn't have their best player, it obviously drastically helps your chances of winning the series, because we all know Kawhi is very important to this Clipper team, since he's literally a top 5 player in the NBA and he's an automatic bucket. So if the Suns win this series, I guarantee it's going to be somewhat due to the fact that the Clippers are missing their best player. And that doesn't take away from the Suns if they do win the series, but there is nothing, because there's nothing they could do about it. But Kawhi not playing is definitely an advantage for them. The first reason the Clippers can win this series also relates to injury, because the Phoenix Suns' best or second best player, depends on who you talk to, in Chris Paul, is going to likely miss over half the series. And in my opinion, Chris Paul is clearly the most important player to this team, so losing him is a huge deal. I would say that losing him is just as big of a deal as the Clippers losing Kawhi, so both injuries kind of even each other out. Chris Paul is very important to his team as he gets them easy shots for a lot of their teammates, and he just has a presence on the court that is calming, because he can slow the game down and control the tempo, and he has his unstoppable mid-range shot that he can get over anyone. So to be honest, if the Clippers are gonna win this series, a big reason for that happening is definitely because Chris Paul wasn't available for the Suns. I don't think Paul is gonna potentially miss the whole series, but I think he's gonna miss over half of it, which would definitely play in the Clippers' favor. The second reason the Phoenix Suns can win the series is because of the fact that, as we know, the Suns are a very good offensive team, as during the regular season they were a top 5 offense in the league, and in the postseason it has carried over. Obviously, them missing Chris Paul is really going to hurt this team, but because he's literally a top 5 point guard in the NBA right now, and he's a top 10 point guard in NBA history. But surprisingly, Cameron Payne has been really good for the Phoenix Suns, so it's not like they're going to be putting a trash point guard to replace Paul. Obviously, Cameron Payne can't fully do what Chris Paul can do. I don't know if there's anyone in the league who can, but he's still a very solid guard, which is a positive side, because as we know, Phoenix is one of the best offenses in the league, as they have Devin Booker, who has looked like a superstar throughout the postseason. He's a guy who the Clippers are gonna have to focus a lot on, because he's gonna give them buckets, and he's so skilled of a scorer that I don't think anyone on the Clippers can guard him great outside of Paul George, because I doubt Paul George is gonna guard him consistently, since without Kawhi, they're going to need Paul George to step up a lot on offense, and they probably want him to conserve his energy. But around Booker, they have all types of great three-point shooters, as they have Jay Crowder, who's been hitting his threes consistently as of late, and he's the guy who's going to knock down some three-pointers so you can't leave him open. They also have Cameron Johnson, who's the guy who has been knocking down his three-pointers all postseason, so you can't leave him open. They have Mikal Bridges, who hasn't really been fantastic in the postseason, but he's still been pretty solid. He's a guy who definitely can't leave open. And they have DeAndre Ayton, who has been really dominant these playoffs, and he's truly been showing his true potential. And the Clippers are definitely going to have to watch out for him, because without Chris Paul, I feel like he's going to be more aggressive and be a secondary scorer on this team. They also have Cameron Payne, who's a very solid guard. I don't think he's the worst replacement for Chris Paul, since he can shoot the 3-ball at a good level, and he's a pretty solid passer, and he can score the ball decently. Phoenix is simply elite on offense because they have a fantastic 3-point shooters, and that has led to them shooting 37% from 3 during the playoffs, and they're averaging 115 points a game in the postseason. season. So if the Phoenix Suns want to beat the Clippers, they're gonna have to score a lot. And I believe if the Phoenix Suns end up winning the series, it's gonna be because their offense was still good without Chris Paul. The second reason the LA Clippers can win the series is the fact that the Clippers are a very good defensive team. For several games and long stretches of moments, the Clippers absolutely shut down the Utah Jazz's offense, and the Jazz were a top 5 offense in the league. So doing that is no easy feat. And I honestly believe the Jazz are probably a better offensive team than the Phoenix Suns by a little bit, or at worst, they're both on the same page and level, which means that I think the Clippers can have some success defending the Phoenix Suns, because this is a Clippers roster that, although they're missing Kawhi Leonard, they still have a bunch of solid defenders, as they obviously have Paul George, who's a great perimeter defender. Patrick Beverley's a pretty good perimeter defender. Marcus Morris is a pretty good perimeter defender. Terrence Mann, who I think should be getting consistent minutes now, is a solid defender. Nicholas Batum's a solid defender. And Ivica Zubac is a good defensive center, so he should do a solid job on DeAndre Ayton. So this Clippers roster can really defend at a great level. The only problem is that at certain moments, their defense looks absolutely terrible or just average. But when they have the stretches where they're good on defense, they actually look like one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. So if the Clippers actually want to win their series, their defense is going to have to be really good. And I think there's a realistic chance that it can be really good. If the Clippers end up winning the series, it's going to be because they slowed Phoenix's offense down enough. The Clipper team also has a lot of defenders they can throw at Devin Booker, but if I'm being honest, I don't think any of them will be able to stop him. They can only hope to slow him down, because the Clippers weren't able to lock down Donovan Mitchell at all last series. And I feel like Booker can take advantage just like he did. But I do think the Clippers can have success when it comes to neutralizing players outside of Booker with their rotations and just their abundance of solid defenders. So the Clippers defense is going to be very important for them in this series. The third reason the Phoenix Suns can win this series is the fact that Phoenix is one of the best defensive teams in the NBA, and they're simply fantastic on that side of the floor. And that is mainly due to the fact that Phoenix has a very, very good head coach in Monty Williams, who makes very good defensive schemes that perfectly defend the other team. And I see no reason why he couldn't make a good scheme against the Clippers, because against the first round versus the Lakers, they had an amazing scheme and they kept making the Lakers struggle for points. And in the second round versus the Nuggets, they neutralized Nikola Jokic's help, and in certain moments they neutralized him. So against this Clippers team, I think they can do the same thing. The Suns also have a bunch of solid defenders, as they have Mikal Bridges, who's a great perimeter defender. I think he's gonna guard Paul George and he's gonna do a pretty good job. They also have Jay Crowder, who's a solid defender. He could defend Paul George at a decent level. Devin Booker at this point is a solid defender, especially in the playoffs. To my surprise, Cameron Johnson is actually a really solid defender, and DeAndre Ayton has really stepped up his defense in the postseason. And I think he will be very important to their success on the defensive side of the floor, since he's going to be guarding the paint from the Clippers. Phoenix is definitely a team that is capable of defending the Clippers at a solid level. So if they win the series, it's going to be because they were able to defend them at a good enough level to win the series. The third reason the LA Clippers can win this series versus the Phoenix Suns is the fact that the Clippers are absolutely a fantastic three-point shooting team. As during the regular season, they had the best three-point percentage in the whole NBA, and they actually had one of the best three-point percentages in NBA history. So defending them is not going to be easy, due to the fact that they can literally be making over 23s on crazy efficiency. And when a team can shoot that good, it is pretty hard to defend them, since you can't leave anyone open. Because we all know they have Paul George, who's a fantastic three-point shooter. They have Marcus Morris, who's a fantastic shooter. Nicholas Batum's a really good shooter. They have Terrence Mann, who doesn't attempt a crazy amount, but he isn't a guy you can leave open. Reggie Jackson has been the Clippers' third best player this whole playoff run, and he's someone you can't leave open, as he's shooting a crazy 43% from three. They also have Patrick Beverley, who I don't think you can leave open. So basically every single player on this team can hit threes, at least players who get significant amount of minutes. And I know Ivica Zubac can't hit three-pointers, but he's a center, it's not a huge deal, and they can just take him out the game in certain moments. And something that makes this Clippers team so great is the fact that they have the best small ball lineup in the league right now, in my opinion, because they can go to a lineup with no traditional big men. They can run their starters and have Nicholas Batum play the 5 spot, and that way the floor is fully spaced out, and it forces the opposing team's traditional center to have to defend the perimeter, or it pulls him out the paint and leaves like the paint open for players to slash. And if he doesn't commit to the shooter, then they have a wide open shooter at all times. The only problem is that, unlike previous centers, DeAndre Ayton is actually a center who can score in the post. Because in previous rounds, the Clippers had to face centers like Boban Marjanovic and Rudy Gobert, but Ayton is definitely a player who will abuse the Clippers when they put a guy like Nicholas Batum on them. Rudy Gobert or Boban Marjanovic weren't as amazing as him, so I think Ayton will abuse them if they put Nicholas Batum, Paul George, or anyone like that on him. But on offense, this could definitely give Phoenix some problems. So if the Clippers want to win the series, they're gonna have to knock down their three-point shot. The fourth reason I believe the Phoenix Suns can win the series is the fact that, as we have seen in the previous 2 rounds of the Clippers, they are a very inconsistent team. As in both of those series, they went down 2-0 and they miraculously made a comeback, which is very impressive, and they deserve a lot of credit for it, because I didn't actually think they would come back both of the times. But in my opinion, Phoenix is clearly a better team than both the Mavs and the Utah Jazz. Although I think the difference between them and the Jazz is pretty slim, but nonetheless, I think Phoenix has the better team out of all of them. They also have Chris Paul on their team, so his leadership is going to stick out, and he's going to help them calm down and chill in certain moments. And all I'm going to say is that if the Clippers go down 2-0 versus the Phoenix Suns, I know I doubted them the last 2 times and they made a comeback, but against this Phoenix Suns team, especially without Kawhi Leonard, I don't think they can afford to do that, since the Suns are a very tough and experienced team. And if we're being honest, in the previous 2 series, the Clippers simply had a better roster than the Jazz and the Mavericks, and I think that's what really helped them win, because they had a better roster than them. But when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, I don't think they're significantly better, or they're probably not even better in general than the Suns. So them falling down and being inconsistent and having games where they don't even look like they should be in the playoff definitely can't happen if they want to win. But I do expect there to be 1 or 2 games where the Clippers just look absolutely horrible, and that definitely can't happen if the Clippers want to win. But as I said, I think that will happen, and I think that definitely improves the chances of Phoenix Suns winning this series. The fourth reason the LA Clippers can beat the Phoenix Suns is simply due to the fact that they're going to need Paul George to play like a superstar. Because if you could get production from Marcus Morris, Terrence Mann, Nicholas Batum, anyone else, etc., but if you don't get production from Paul George and he doesn't play at a great level, to be honest, the team doesn't have a chance to win this series. And I'm not going to lie, if I didn't see those last 2 games without Kawhi in the Utah Jazz series, I would have said that the Clippers are for sure going to lose the series, due to the fact that Paul George isn't someone who I thought could carry a team in the playoffs, but he's been way better during these playoffs, and I truly think there's a legitimate chance he's going to play absolutely fantastic in this series. Obviously, there's a chance we're going to get that 1 or 2 pandemic P game where George is just terrible, and I think overall, Paul George is going to be fantastic in this series, and that's drastically going to help the chances of the Clippers winning, because if he's not playing great, Phoenix is going to win the series. But if I had to make my prediction on who I think will win the series, I'd honestly go with the Phoenix Suns, and I predict them to win it in 7 games. And this is due to the fact that Phoenix is both a great offensive and defensive team. And unlike the Clippers, there's a realistic chance that Chris Paul, their best or second best player, returns in the series, whereas I don't think Kawhi is going to return in the series at all. Phoenix also is going to have home court advantage, and Phoenix is clearly a team that plays better at home, but they play well anywhere. Also, although I think Paul George is going to play pretty good in this playoff series, and he's been pretty good in these playoffs, there is still a chance that he turns back in the pandemic P, so I'm not going to put all my confidence in him yet, but I do think he will be solid. And also, the Clippers are just a very inconsistent team. Some nights they look like they should be title favorites, and some nights they look like they shouldn't even be on the court. Whereas with Phoenix, they're a pretty consistent team. I'm going to predict the Suns to win this in a close 7-game series, even though Chris Paul is going to miss time. But I will say, if Kawhi Leonard was playing and Chris Paul was playing, I think I would have predicted the Clippers to win in 7 games, simply due to the fact that I'm not going to bet against Kawhi Leonard again. But nonetheless, if Phoenix wins this series, it isn't a Mickey Mouse win, because Chris Paul is going to be missing a significant amount of time, and calling stuff a Mickey Mouse anything is just childish. But nonetheless, I'm expecting a pretty good series between these 2 teams, although I would have rather to see the Jazz versus the Suns. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know who you think is going to win this series. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content, and touch from a goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video, start a conversation, as I actually do respond to all of my comments, and I'm out.